I'm Dawn Mant. I'm the Executive Director of the Red River Regional Council, headquartered in Grafton, and working in 4 counties, Nelson, Grand Forks, Walsh, and Pembina. About a year ago, we kicked off a project with Roger Brooks as a national facilitator, I think he likes to call himself. We are very lucky. COVID brought us some supplemental funding, which we've invested into a year-long initiative with Roger and doing destination development for all 4 counties, 41 communities, every body of water, every state park, etc. So I think this is the project of the grandest scale Roger's ever tried to tackle. And he told us at lunch it was the 2nd hardest he's ever experienced. So this has not been an easy challenge, but we feel like we're very fortunate to be in Roger's hands. He wanted to have a meeting with all the historic groups in the area, in the entire 4-county region, to talk about how we can all work together to maybe level up our impact and our draw to the area. The entire purpose of this project, the Destination Red River Project, is to have more people excited to live here, invest here, and to visit here. So those are our goals for this project. Before we get started, I want to mention a couple of things. We have coffee and water and cookies in the back. This is meant to be an informal discussion with Roger, so feel free to raise your hand and ask any questions that you have. And I think I'm going to let Roger take it from here. I think we would like to have each of you stand and just give a quick rundown of who you are and what you're representing, so we all have an idea of who's in the room. And that will also give Roger some idea of who's here and how we can all work together. So with that, Roger, do you want to? Thank you.
Hi, everyone. What's with all the wind out there? So I'm gonna do this on the microphone. So if you don't mind, just say who you are and who you're with here, and we'll just kind of pass it around the room, and then I've got lots of questions for you. You get to start.
Thank you. I'm Corinne Vaughn. I'm from Cavalier, and I represent the Northeast North Dakota Heritage Association. I've worked with them almost since their inception, which was in 1986, if you can believe that or not. But here I am. I'll give it to the next.
There's a real vibration. We can't really hear.
Is it? Yeah. Hang on a sec. Keep talking, and I'll try to.
Okay, I'm Representative Dave Munson from District 19 now, after the reorganization. I'm on the board of Northeast North Dakota Heritage Association, and in my committee assignment in Bismarck, I am chairman of the Education and Environment section of House Appropriations. I have Parks and Rec is in my budget, so I'll turn it over to Emily.
I'm Emily Wabick. I work at Icelandic State Park, where we work really closely with the Northeast North Dakota Heritage Association, and then I'm also on the Pembina County Historic Preservation Commission. Yes, and then this is Mike. He is my boss at the park.
Hello, I'm Julie Gemmel from Fordville, and I represent the Walsh County Job Development Authority here in Grafton, and I'm also just a community promoter in Fordville.
Hello, I'm Amy Voskick. I'm the city auditor of Lakota and also on the Nelson County JD, originally from Walsh County area, so good to be back.
I'm Angela Jugula. I am the director at the A.M. Tufthagen Museum in Lakota, as well as our library director, and I am also on the committee for the Art on the Prairie that's going on throughout the state for this region here.
I'm Diane Hoverson, and I'm with the Grafton Women's Action Committee.
And these are two of my friends that are also part of that group. And we're going to get Grafton back. It says, go back Grafton.
Okay.
We have some t-shirts in the car if you'd like to have them.
I'm Bonnie Van Rugen. It's nice to meet everybody here. I'm from Grafton, just for a few years now. It's nice to be a part of the community.
My name is Mary Ellen Smith, and I'm from Grafton. And I hope to see Grafton just blossom. We need some beautification there. We need some changes. So I'm willing to listen and help.
I'm Jim Benjaminson with the Pembina County Historic Preservation Commission, also with Pembina County Historical Society, and County Commissioner and General all-around troublemaker.
Wow. Right.
I'm Steve Barton, a retired college teacher from NDSU, and I've been coming up to these counties for as far back. I played in a rock and roll band out of Adams and Edmore and that area back in the mid-'60s. But I've been coming up here for the past 20 years at least, looking at historic buildings and historic communities, and have had the great good fortune to be introduced to the heritage of the Icelandic community and mountain and garden area, and Zelda has introduced me to a lot of the early log structures up in Walhalla, Leroy area. Had a chance to learn about the Gudlickson heritage and the wonderful museum there, and what a fine job that does of celebrating cultural heritage and tradition. Currently, I happen to serve on the State Historical Board, and I know there's a lot of interest in what the state can do to promote cultural tourism and heritage appreciation and those kinds of things. And so I was kind of excited at the last minute. Zelda mentioned to me that this meeting was happening today, and I wanted to come up and hear and listen and learn. I've also got a recent connection, maybe the last 8 years. My wife and I acquired a property in Lakota and renovated the old stone church in Lakota. And so it's nice to see the community represented here and see that everyone's kind of thinking together, thinking alongside each other. So thanks for letting me come.
And he's actually chairman of the State Historical Society. State Historical Society of North Dakota, right?
Right.
That's what it said, okay. So I'm Zelda Harchin, and I'm administrator of the Pembina County Museum, and I am chair of the Pembina County Historical Preservation Commission.
Good afternoon, I'm Kathy Stremick. I live in the city of Walhalla. I'm on the Rendezvous Region Tourism Council and treasurer of the Pembina County JDA.
I'm Kathy Robertson. I'm from Mountain, North Dakota. I'm a board member of the Icelandic Communities Association and a couple of the local cemetery boards. And I am working at the Pembina County Museum.
I'm Dennis Morrison from Cavalier, and I'm on the Pembina County Historical Society as a director.
I'm Pat Morrison from Cavalier, and I'm secretary of the Pembina County Historical Society.
Hi, my name is Doris Camp. I'm from Cavalier. I just retired from the Cavalier Chronicle after 54 years, and I'm president of the Pembina County Historical Society. And I plan to work out there pretty much all summer long as a volunteer.
I'm with Fort Pembina Historical Society and also a member of Pembina County Historic Preservation Commission. Nice to be here.
Hi, I'm Brian Murray. I'm the outreach coordinator for the Pembina State Museum. I also help oversee both the Jangra and Kitson fur trading post historic sites in Walhalla.
Hi, I'm Marla Spohl. I'm from Drayton, and I'm representing the Pembina County Preservation Commission and the Oxcart Trails Historical Society in Drayton.
Hi, I'm Ron Bold, and my only claim to fame because I've been driving this young lady around for the last 57 years.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Charlie Hart. I'm from Pembina, North Dakota, perhaps the coldest city in the state, and I represent the Fort Pembina Historical Society.
Hello, my name is Shannon Brazell. I represent the Walsh County Historical Museum here in Minto. I'm also a member of the Walsh County Historical Preservation Committee.
I'm Larry Gunderson from Grafton. I'm Vice President on the Board of Directors at the Walsh County Grafton Heritage.
Good afternoon. I'm Darrell Campbell, Grafton, President of the Heritage Village in Grafton, President of the Historical Society, and I am Chairman of the Walsh County Water Board. So the last 3.5 weeks has been quite nice.
I'm Jean Howsey from Grafton, representing the Walsh County Heritage Village.
I'm Julie Campbell from Grafton. I am treasurer of the Walsh County Historical Society, and I'm on the board of directors for Heritage Village. I recently retired as the director of the Walsh County Job Development Authority and the Rendezvous Region Tourism Council, so I've been involved in this since last year. So just wanted to see how it all plays out and stay involved. So
This is how retirement goes.
I'm Shirley Burns. I am the Executive Vice President of the Grafton Area Chamber of Commerce. I'm also on the board for the Rendezvous Region Tourism Council and newly elected to the board for Walsh County Heritage Village in Grafton.
I'm Lauren Easton, and I am with the Red River Regional Council.
I'm Joan French. I took over for Julie Campbell, so whatever she said, that's what I'm doing now.
All right. Can you hear me fine without that? Is it easier to hear without the microphone than with the microphone?
Yes.
Or is that better?
No.
It's not better, okay. We'll work on that. Just to give you some background, my name is Roger Brooks, as Don already said, and I will go ahead and figure out where the oh, there it is. And I've been working, well, I'll give you a little bit of background. I grew up in the Seattle, Washington area, been in Arizona for the last 10 years. When I started this whole venture, I went to law school at University of Washington Law School, and I was going to go into entertainment law. And I was doing tour management for international recording artists for the largest concert company in the world, which was at the time Concerts West. And the groups I did, this is going to date me, and you can try to guess what years. I managed a tour for Earth, Wind, and Fire. Yep, sound familiar? Chicago. I also did Fleetwood Mac's Tusk Tour. I had hair before I started dealing with Fleetwood Mac. I thought they were going to kill each other, and it gave me ulcers dealing with them. I could tell you stories there. And I did, my claim to fame is managing the tour for the Bee Gees, Saturday Night Fever, right? Anybody want to guess what years? And I did other bands. Anybody got a guess?
70s.
Not, what?
70s.
70, late 70s, 79, 80, 81. And when I was dealing with Fleetwood Mac, I had ulcers dealing with them. As a matter of fact, about 3 years ago, I was meeting with a group of people in a restaurant, people from Alberta that were down in Scottsdale, and I'm sitting at this table talking to them, and this guy comes up to me wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses. He says, "Say, I don't mean to interrupt you, but you seem familiar to me." I said, "I'm sorry I talk so loud." He goes, No. I'm trying to place you. And I said, well, he goes, "Did you ever work in the music industry?" And I said, "Yeah, I used to do tour management for Concerts West." He takes off his sunglasses and his baseball cap, and it was Lindsey Buckingham from Fleetwood Mac. And the first thing he said is, "What happened to your hair?" And I went, "You guys!" You know what his response was? "We've never had any business being in a band together." I said, "Thanks a lot." And they still have their challenges. But during that time, I had become friends with a guy from 1960s rock and roll, Paul Revere. Anybody remember Paul Revere and the Raiders? Yeah, when you raise your hand, you just dated yourselves.
Yeah.
He was a very good friend of mine. He was 14 years older than me. We called him Uncle Paul. And he came up to me one day and he said, you know, Roger, you're never going to change the world in the concert industry. I know these guys in Canada that are trying to build this destination resort. You're a good promoter. You can make that place go. So I dumped working in the music industry and went up and helped develop Whistler Resort in British Columbia. Then I went and worked in Colorado for Copper Mountain Resort and some resorts there, Vail and some of those. Then I worked down in Hilton Head Island for Harbor Town. And so for 10 years I worked in the resort industry, and then finally this guy calls me up. His name is Mike Pence, a different Mike Pence than the vice president we had. And he said, Roger, would you ever come and fix up a town? And it was Ocean Shores, Washington, that we that lived in the Seattle area called Open Source. How do you like that for a project? And so I went out there, took a leave absent, went out there and resurrected that town, so to speak. And since then, since 1991, we have worked in 2,200 towns in 45 of the 50 states, all across Canada, every province in Canada, and then over in Western Europe, Scandinavia, down in Africa. And so I spent quite a bit of time, used to, before COVID, 250 days a year on the road. During all of this last 30 years working for public sector, cities, towns, counties, states, I've spoken at dozens of states. I've spoken at the North Dakota Governor's Conference on Tourism probably 3 or 4 times over the years. I was the governor's guest when he did the Main Street North Dakota, which was the second largest Main Street conference in the country. And that was in 2019, I believe. And so during all this process, we've also secret shopped more than 2,000 towns. That's where we secret shopped we did all of Pembina County, Walsh, Grand Forks, and Nelson counties. And during that, and we've done that for over 2,000 communities, needless to say, I have probably been in no less than 6,000 or 7,000 museums and historic sites. So I've probably seen it. And we tried to get into a lot of yours, but when I was here, this was last year, we're in COVID. And most museums, including yours, were closed, and it certainly makes sense. We did find a few open. But during this process of coming here in Northeast North Dakota, we had a couple of challenges. Number one, Northeast North Dakota, well, first of all, let me back up a second. If you want to increase your population, tourism is the front door to your non-tourism economic development. In other words, if we can get people to come here first as a visitor and they fall in love with the area, maybe they will decide to live here. And that'd be great. You want to use this one? Is that better? Whoa, that one's real good. Is that better? Yeah, okay, there we go. Now I won't be hoarse.
So, Roger, will you be picked up on here?
Yes, I still picked up on there. And so, one thing we've learned is so that if you can get people to come here first as a visitor, maybe they'll say, this would be a great place to live. This would be a great place to raise a family. As a matter of fact, there's a YouTube channel called The World According to Briggs. He has about 500,000 subscribers, and he's been in all the states, and he recently did one, well, actually it was a year ago, where he said, here's the 10 reasons why you need to live in North Dakota. And number one was a place to raise a family. So here's what COVID did. COVID created a new movement called digital nomads. There are 2 million people that live in their RVs full time. The average age of a person buying an RV is 38 years old. Not us boomers. And they buy an RV because for $30 or $40 or $50,000, they could buy a house and they could be anywhere they want to be. As long as they have internet access, they can work remotely. So it's digital nomads. The second thing is the work from anywhere movement. Even places like Tulsa, Chattanooga, cities all across the country are paying people up to $15,000 just to live there for 2 years and then work remotely. So they're working for somebody out of state, but they're living in your community. I mean, so all of a sudden this is a great opportunity to bring people back into Northeast North Dakota. Increasing your population is one of our primary things to do. So now, with tourism as the front door, here's your challenge. You really don't have anything in Northeast North Dakota that can outcompete things I can get closer to home in the western side of the state, in the central side of the state, in Minnesota, in South Dakota. So how do you stand out? How do you outcompete these areas? But there was two things that I really thought were your best assets. Number one is camping. And it's not because you have outstanding, I mean, I think Icelandic, Turtle River, I mean, I think you have some great camping areas. But here's the thing. There are so many RVers out there, and it's hard to get a reservation anywhere, except here. Because North Dakota's kind of undiscovered. Yeah, they're over in Medora and they're over in that area of the state, but they don't come over here. They head right down to South Dakota, or they head right through to Minnesota or somewhere else. So you have a great, almost every single town at RV parks. And so we thought, well, if we can promote RVing and camping and get people to come here and discover it, as long as we have cell access or internet access, and by the way, there's a big savior for you right now, it's called Starlink. We actually are one of the beta testers of Starlink. We are RV, we are staying in Grafton at Listicow, and guess what? We have Starlink, and I get cable, I get downloads, 150 gigabits or 300 gigabits a second in downloads, and 150, better than most cable places can. So that's good news for Northeast North Dakota as Starlink starts to roll out. And if you're not familiar with Starlink, it's Elon Musk's SpaceX program that's doing a gazillion low orbit satellites and bringing fast, high-speed internet to rural areas. So number one was camping. Number two is your historical sites and your historical attractions. And having worked in 45 of the 50 states and been in thousands of museums, I think that your historic sites and assets are better than almost every state I've been in, and I don't say that everywhere. It is really outstanding. And so I thought that's your two strongest things. However, only 3% of travelers will go to historic sites as their primary reason for coming in. Here's what you have to understand. In Washington, D.C., 85% of the thing that go, 85% of the people that go into any Smithsonian museum are in Washington, D.C. for other reasons, but while they're there, they go into whichever one of the Smithsonian museums that most appeals to it. A lot of times they'll go into half a dozen of them. See what I mean? So once we're here, you have a great, if we get them here for camping, then how can we get them into your museums? Because while they're here, we want to learn about your history. And I think your history, you have a great story to tell. I think your assets are outstanding, and I don't say that lightly. However, there is a challenge. And well, let me give you one more thing. I was working down in Olympia, Washington, which is the state capital city, and it's Thurston County down there. And down there they had 11 museums. And like the house that Bing Crosby was born in. Now, how many of you would drive an hour to see the house Bing Crosby was born in? Anybody? Oh, you're such a mean bunch. And you're the audience they're trying to attract. But you're right. But what if there were 11 museums and that was just one of them and they're all fairly close to each other? Would you do it then? What happened is none of these museums had any marketing money. They were all volunteers. They each tried to do their little old brochure. But this gal named Carla Wolfsburg got together and she went to every single one of these. And they did this little co-op brochure. It cost each museum $200. There was one or two that couldn't even afford the $200, but there was enough from everybody else to create this museum. So I created this brochure called the South Sound Heritage Attractions. And guess what happened? They distributed it at Chambers of Commerce and Visitor Information Centers. Their attendance tripled while cutting their collective marketing costs by 2/3 because they partnered together. And so we think that every museum in this region, in these counties, should be cross-selling the next one. So if you're at Icelandic State Park, you're over there, you'd say, hey, we need to cross-sell you to the one right across the street. And then that one might cross-sell to another historic site. See what I mean? We always need to be cross-selling each other. We're doing a plan for Red River region that's going to include, that's one of the recommendations. And so what you need to be is have an easel inside the door. And when people come in, they say, we hope you enjoy your experience, but when you leave, here's another great site you need to go visit. And then point them to Grafton or wherever it's at in any of these counties. So that's number one. We'd love to create this. And I'm not here to ask for money. We might be able to do this. I put in the budget that the museums wouldn't have to pay anything for this. But there's another one, is if we promote your historical attractions, when the heck are you ever going to be open? We're now emerging out of COVID, and we can't promote you. If I was to sit there and put up a list of all the historical attractions, whether it's a village in Grafton, whether it's out in Cavalier, wherever you're at, out at Stump Lake, that historical village, everywhere we go, you've got great assets. And yet when I went to them last September, it just says closed due to COVID, or if you want a tour, call this phone number. How can we promote you if we go out there, we send people out there, and 9 out of 10 of you are closed? So what I'm asking you, and this is something you could discuss among yourselves, you could tell me, what we really need from you is some consistency. So for instance, if everybody here would say, well, guess what? We will have our museums open from July 15th to October 15th. Let me tell you something about June 15th to October 15th. First of all, baby boomers' peak months for travel are April, May, September, and October. They're your easiest people to get are boomers. They travel in the shoulder seasons. In the summer season, what's interesting about millennials, let me tell you about millennials. These are people that are in their very late 20s, mainly in their 30s. It is the most civically minded generation in U.S. history. Believe it or not, the millennials. There are more mayors under the age of 35 today than ever before in U.S. history. Right now. They also love history, but they don't want who donated it and collections of stuff. Words to avoid: artifacts, collections, who donated. What they want is stories. I'll never forget when I was at is the Pembina County Museum across from the park? Okay. I was over there walking through all the classic cars, and on one of the classic cars was a story about how the guys who owned the car, and I can't remember the story right off, his son wanted to drive that car when he was like 11 years old. On the farm, of course. But it told a story. People want stories, not artifacts and collections. I've seen enough old typewriters and old wedding dresses to last forever. And so we want stories. And so one thing I would urge you to do is do stories. But the biggest thing is, when can you be open? Can you be open from June 15th to October 15th to give us some of the harvest season? Where we were here last September, the place was packed. And these harvest workers have downtime. And they're going, where can we go? What's open? And I remember that being asked of me, and I go, I don't know. I don't know when anything's open. And there's no consistency. And then you may say, okay, Roger, we agree with you that we can be open then. And then I say, okay, here's next. Could you be open on Fridays and Saturdays, or maybe Thursday, Friday, Saturday? And be open from like 10 to 5. Just so we have some consistency so we can send people out to visit you. And I'd like to hear from you, and I understand money, I understand lack of volunteers, I understand all of that, but we're desperately trying to figure out how we can bring people into your attractions and have them not be frustrated, because within 12 months, social media can take you down. Because they'll say, well, I went to 6 of them and 5 of them were closed, and then the next thing you know, all of this effort that we're doing to help promote you goes right down the drain. That is the problem with social media. People are really quick to say it wasn't that great, or it just wasn't open. On my way out to Stump Lake, there was a little corner with like 4 or 5 little schoolhouses. Do you know what I'm talking about? Out there, I'm going, there's no interpretive signs, there's no information, they're just there. There's no stories. I'd like to know, what was it like 100 years ago when it was minus 15? Did the school teacher get there at 4 in the morning, start a fire, and then get it warmed up for the kids? And what did that teach? See what I mean? People need to be able to live the experience. You've got them. But when can you be open? And I want to hear from you. I mean, when do you have any thoughts, any ideas? Or do we do a separate meeting where you all just sit down that each represent and say, hey, let's come to a meeting of the minds? Somewhere along the line, that's the two things. When can we be open consistently, and how can we change from showing artifacts and who donated stuff to actually telling stories behind them? I worked in one museum in Nova Scotia where they had, you know, the old irons they would put on the stove and heat up and everything. You ever picked one of those up? So in this museum, they said, we want you to pick one up and just hold it up off the table for 30 seconds. And even me as an adult, or a little kids are going, oh my God. So for them to be able to live some of the experience, it doesn't always have to be hands-on, but just for people to understand what it was like to live in North Dakota. You know what it does? Number one, it says these people are really resilient. Because you're cold. You know, your winters aren't any worse than Minnesota. Yet you have this cloud over you. You know, I'll never forget hearing from one of your city council people, I'm not going to say where, when he says, well, Roger, this is just the way it is. We have terrible weather all year round. You know, I'm going, that's just, you're perpetuating something that's not really true. I mean, yeah, you've had your challenges, but we got to get past that. And so I think some of the stories of the resiliency, the pioneers, what it would take to heat a schoolhouse, what it would take to plow fields. I mean, at the Pembina County Museum outside, there's a gazillion tractors out there. I have no clue about any of them. There's no stories. It might say this was 1936, but if we just said, and not who owned it, but just say, did you know it took 6 horses or 3 horses or 1 horse would do this? They could plow 100 feet. It would take about 15 minutes, or can you imagine doing 50 acres? I mean, anything to put people in the mindset of what it was like. Yes?
I ended up giving a quick tour today to about 20 junior high and high school students here in Minto Museum today. And I'm really rusty. I haven't done tours in a while, but I found the best thing that kept their attention was when I translated items from those to what it equates to now. And a lot of times they're just like, oh, okay. And then you give, like, we have a picture of where they're actually building a road with the mules and all that, pulling everything up. And I translated that, and then the kids started asking more questions. And so that's what I did. I don't know if that's the kind of thing you're looking for.
Well, we want to know, what was it like? What was it like before you had power everywhere? What was it like? How far did kids have to go to school? What was it like? Did they have root cellars? What was it like when they, dealt with weather events? How did these families? They don't have any clue. I got to tell you that I've spoken at so many colleges, and I talk a lot about the concert industry. But let me tell you something about the concert industry when I was doing it. We would be in Edmonton. All the venues we did were 15 to 20,000 people. So these are big. This is Earth, Wind, Fire, Chicago, all of those types of bands. But what happened is, 79, 80, and 81, we'd go from Edmonton, Alberta. 48 hours later, we're playing Calgary, Alberta. 48 hours every other day. Then we're playing in Vancouver, BC, then Seattle, then Portland, then San Francisco, Sacramento, San Francisco. We go zigzagging up and down. And I said, here's the deal. We're organizing all the band members. We're organizing all their equipment. We have multiple semi-truckloads. We have buses that they're in. Some band members are flying. Some of them are in these buses. And we had to coordinate this. We had to coordinate selling all the tickets. There was no internet. There were no cell phones. I say we went on the road with rolls of dimes because that's what telephone booths cost then. And that's how we managed to. We'd go from telephone booth to figure out where the semis were. When I talk to college students, they're just dumbfounded about the logistics of moving a band from one state to another and selling tickets. And then when they get there, we got to get them off the plane, out of the bus, into hotel rooms. When I did the Eagles, which which I was good friends with Glenn Fry, when we did the Eagles, we put them on their own floor of the hotel room because they like to smoke a little marijuana to relax them in the evenings, and of course that would waft out. You know, so you have to coordinate all this. And then they'd be doing press appearances. They'd be on television, they'd be on radio, we're selling tickets. And so, yes, when you tell us stories like that, then all of a sudden they had new respect for what I used to do. So in your terms, yeah, exactly. Well, what was that like? I mean, even now, I got to, when I was here in September, of my 40 years doing this, it was one of the most fascinating experiences to watch the harvest. It was like an orchestra, all the beats. I didn't even know what sugar beets were. I thought they were little red beets that they just made into sugar. And then I'd see these big, huge things on the side of the road. I see all these fans or something on the side of the road. I said, what the heck are those? There's no information. I'm digging around YouTube. But then I see that they own the truckers, carry so many loads a day. I didn't have to plow the fields. The weather makes a difference. And it's this whole orchestra going on. It was fascinating. And then we were here right at the end when all of a sudden where all those big fans are to vent them, keep them from freezing. I think that's what they're for. All of a sudden there's these mountains of beets, literal mountains. And we'd drive out there near Hoople and some of those areas, and all of a sudden the next day it would be, you know, another 100 tons of sugar beets. Those are the things that to you may be like, yeah, whatever, we have to live through that every fall. To us, we find it absolutely fascinating. I mean, I'll never forget coming to a corner on 81, one of these corners, where there was a bunch of beets on the side of the road that rode off the top of the truck and picking up one. And I'm wondering, could we eat it? Could we cut it up and dice it? We're on YouTube looking for videos. Can you actually eat it? It turns out you can. We had no clue. So it's even things like that to you that we would find fascinating. I mean, the little did you know that I saw this, I can't remember if it was the Pembina State Museum, somewhere there was this did you know about that you harvest, what, 70% of the country's sugar. It comes from right here. It's not coming from Kansas or Missouri, or it's coming from Northeast North Dakota. So I think there's your history, then there's your agriculture, and we can't find any information. There's no YouTube videos. I would love to see you museums get and create little videos of, if you come into a museum, here's something that's really cool. So one of the things I remember about Pembina's museum is, was it Case that made the car? Is it Case? Yeah. They made one car, I think, or they made 100 of them, whatever, but they just did it, and you know, Case that makes equipment. Just seeing that car, and it might be one of the few, if any, left in the whole United States. I don't know, but it was fascinating to see that they even tried to get in the car business. You know, there's got to be there's a story there. And I thought it was fascinating. You won't find that anywhere else. So sometimes it's those little golden nuggets, those hidden gems. And that brings me to another thing we want to do. This is Door County, Wisconsin, but another thing that we're encouraging the plan is to create the hidden gems of the Rendezvous region, which is the tourism for this whole area. And we thought, if you do the hidden gems, I wonder how many hidden gems you have in some of your historical sites. You know, that we have to go uncover or find. And so that's what I want to know from you. So does anybody have any ideas about what months you think you could be consistently open, or if you just never will be open? Any comments? Ideas? Thoughts? Yes.
I know, like for us here, and I think in Grafton too, we're open a lot from end of mid-May through into August, September, just for a fact of we have a lot in those months. A lot of schools want to do tours.
Yes.
So we end up doing, but because like my building's not heat controlled, I'm not bringing kids in there in any earlier than that, just for a fact of it be no water, yeah, all of that.
Of course.
So that's a consideration, and then also close. I have to be flexible because if it starts freezing early, I have to cut it off.
Right.
That's all there is to it. So.
But even if in our marketing we say, You know, these, even if we had a list that said these are opening in mid-May, weather depending, they close in mid-October, weather depending, and we'll update the list as we get closer, see what I mean? So it starts freezing at the end of September and everybody says we gotta shut down, then we could say, hey, these museums close, and we could have a website. We're trying to create a clearinghouse. Rather than you all marketing individually, we're trying to create a place for the Rendezvous Region to help promote you and bring people to your doors. Yes?
The Pembina County Museum is open from Memorial Day to the end of September.
Okay.
From 10
to the end of September.
5, yeah.
Okay.
That's consistent.
Great. So that's that one. Now, here's one thing I want you to remember. The days of Memorial Day to Labor Day, granted you give me the whole month of September there, the days, that ended 20 years ago. Just so you know. The peak months for travel are April, May, September, and October. So that's a good start. What about anybody else? I mean, so that's end of, basically Memorial Day to the end of September. Does that seem realistic to everybody in here? You're sure quiet. Thoughts? Ideas? Something you want to think about? Yes. Sorry, you raised your hand earlier.
So one of the things that I'm working on in Nelson County attributes to those schoolhouses you talked to in Stump Lake Village, which is open seasonally over the summer for the most part, unless you call for a tour. They also have weather issues as far as being winterized, is working with a company out of Bismarck called Talking Trails. One of the things you talked about in Lakota when you were visiting Nelson County was our poor signage and how you knew. So with this trail, we have 20 historic sites in Nelson County that we've called out. You have a consistent sign with a logo. We had a third grader, excuse me, that won a contest. We wanted the kids to buy in on this. And so when you go to these signs, there's a QR code that you can scan. There's beautiful narratives written and stories about every one of these sites, so that not every stop has to always be manned, but you can always access it. And we hit it with multiple different ways. So not only could you use the app and the QR code, but there's also a beautiful brochure that has a picture of all 20 stops and a shorter narrative, so that you can have that's in all of the different stops, plus the gas stations and everything like that, working together. And what we really liked about Talking Trails, Stacy worked with us also, is up in Pembina, they're doing, is it an 80 point with Talking Trail, I think, Dawn?
The Rendezvous
region up there. And so their app will kind of lead them through, so that consistency, because some of them, the schoolhouses are really never staffed. There isn't an open building or, you know, the Prairie Posse gazebo and things like that.
And just so you know, and I don't even know if there's power there on that corner, but there's a thing out there called near field communications. So, for instance, over at Icelandic State Park, the historical village there, we walked out there and all the buildings were locked. When we were leaving, they said, oh, gee, if you would have come in here and asked for a key, we would have let you take it out there and open up the buildings for you. We didn't know that until we were done. But there's a thing called near field communications, where if you have power there, it's low voltage. So some people will even do it with these little battery packs, that when you walk up towards a church, it will say, oh, you're approaching such and such church. And if you're wearing headphones or just on your phone, it will start telling you about the church as you're walking towards it and when you're there. If you start walking over to another building when you're within, I think it's 300 feet or so, it'll pick up where you're at and say, oh, you're walking over here, and it will tell the story for you. And that would be, those are some things you could do. And maybe there's things we can write grants for. I mean, it's always good to be able to see in the buildings. You know, but part of your problem is you don't even put up signs. Like when I was there and I was walking out to all the buildings, that beautiful church out there, and then when we're getting ready to leave, somebody says, well, we would have given you a key. Well, too late now, didn't know that. And so there's a lot of that hit and miss all over the place. Here in Grafton, out at that historic village out there, we walked around to about what seemed like 100 buildings, and we finally saw in one building it says, if you'd like a tour, here's a list of names and some phone numbers. Well, it said Sue, John, gave first names and then a bunch of phone numbers, no area codes for us out of state that don't have your area code. And then most visitors aren't going to call you and say, yeah, I'm here at your historical village. How soon can you get here? I mean, it just doesn't work that way. And we're not gonna go there and say, well, let me call you and make an appointment for next week sometime because we're gone. See what I mean? So those are things we have to work past. So Memorial Day to the end of September, near field communication could be something that maybe we collectively get together, write a grant for, just like Talking Trails. I think that would be absolutely perfect. So well, can we get everybody involved in that? Because it's an app that you can get, and then it can help you, where you're at. We'll tell you where you're at and tell you the story behind it.
No, I'm just curious. I've gone to those museums that you're talking about, and it tells me to call a number, okay? I have never done that because I just don't feel comfortable doing it. I'm just curious of all the people here that run these museums and doing whatever, do you get a lot of calls?
I do.
Do you really?
Yeah.
People actually call?
Yeah, and then off of the number, because the number's on the Facebook page too for the museum, I get a lot of emails and phone calls, not only from...
And what I say about phone numbers, getting anybody under 45 to call you because you have a phone number, not gonna happen. You know what they do? They'll test you and say, is it okay if I call you now? Right? They're not gonna call. And so the younger generations are just not gonna call. I mean, I asked my wife, I said, we're here, should we call one of these numbers and maybe we can come back in 2 or 3 days? She goes, I'm not gonna call them.
That's me, and I was with my 2 grandsons, and we were at a couple of places in Pembina County, because I always make sure they visit all the historical sites, and
Yeah, they're not gonna. You might get.
Call, I felt bad, because I know what that would be like. I would never call somebody and say, gee, can you come up in the museum? We're gonna be here for,
The next half hour. And I understand schools going to pay, where they're saying, well, we want a school tour. In those cases, they will always call. Or if a tour bus is coming through and they want to do that. But generally, consumers who we're trying to attract from Grand Forks, from Fargo, from Minnesota, from Bismarck, from anywhere else we can get, Winnipeg, they're coming over here. They don't know your area code. They're not going to call, and they're not going to sit there and say, well, should I call and see if they could be here in the next half hour? It's kind of imposing. And plus, we want to be in places where we're not the only ones. So if we want to go through quickly or something's not interested, we're not locked into a tour that we can just go explore, And so those are the things it's more consistent to do the Talking Trails. It's more consistent to just be open certain days of the week during certain seasons of the year. I think you'll have a much higher success rate.
and antique shops or little shops in rural areas, they have that all the time too. We're closed today, but call and we'll come down. Well, I would feel terrible that if I didn't buy something. I would automatically think I'd have to buy something because now they came down to open up their store or their antique shop. I just don't think...
You just don't do it.
I think the average person just doesn't do that.
80%, 85, I think it's 85. This is Travel and Tourism Research Association did a study about 2 years ago, just prior to COVID, and it was like 85, 87% of consumers will not call a number. They won't call a number for a restaurant, for anything. They won't call a number. And as a matter of fact, it was like 70% won't even walk into a shop if there's no cars in the parking lot. Because they don't want to be there alone, they feel obligated. So you're right, yes.
I don't know, did anybody talk to you about this, the geocache?
Yes, geocaching is a totally different subject, but it is that we're going to promote.
But it's something that has brought a lot of people.
Yes.
I mean, they had a huge geocache event last year, and videos were taken over. I know I saw them on YouTube. They were all over looking. Unfortunately, at that time I was not open, but I saw them from Heritage Village, all kinds of up in Pembina in there, even down in Gilby, down your guys, wherever there was a geocache in North Dakota, people went and they took videos. So we have.
So geocaching, that's part of that is something we're going to promote your waterways too. We need to get people out on your lakes. You've got great. You're not going to out-compete Devil's Lake for water skiing, but heck, your little lakes around here would be fantastic for stand-up paddleboarding, kayaking, canoeing. And so we're going to promote. There's a lot of things we're going to promote. But I think your strongest assets are your historical attractions. And so that's what, that's why today, rather than, geocaching is going to be something we promote. But for you, it's like, well, what can we do to get people into your museums? And number two, some consistency. thoughts. Is it even possible? So how many, I got a question for you. Let's see, in Pembina County, how many historical sites and museums are there? Do you know? Any idea? 20? Five?
Or museum.
Well, and historic sites, because I went all the way up to the border. As a matter of fact, if you go right up to the border in Pembina, off to the right, there was a church there, and there's a big cross there and everything. I couldn't turn around. I had to go over the border just to get back. And it was COVID. So I pulled over, we saw it, I took pictures of it and everything, got in the car and said, there's no way to make a U-turn. So I went up to the gate and the guy says, I'm sorry, the border's closed. I said, well, I'm trying to get back down to Pembina. So he had to actually come out and walk me all the way around and back out so I could get back. See, these are those little things that we need to help people with. But there was that site there, it had a cairn there and everything. I would have loved to have heard the story. So a little near field communications, something there that would say I could pull it up on my app and say, oh, here's where you are. You know, and maybe it just knows by GPS location where you're at and would tell me the story. So those are those kinds of things that we need. But if you have 5, I mean, I went out.
Probably 5 museums, but what we really need is a list of every historical site, not just the museums, but every site that's historical.
Yes.
I don't think that there is one, and some of us have worked on one, but we never get it complete.
Okay, that is something we will help you. That's something we'll put in this plan for you. Because the other one that was, I think it's in Pembina County, it's out a couple of miles off the highway. I think it was north of Drayton, out there. And it's one of the first oldest stores in North Dakota. You know what I'm talking about? It's out in the fields and they restored this guy's house and everything. I'm trying to remember what the name of it is. It's off of 29 on the east side of the highway. We found it by accident. And there's no museum, there's no staffing there, and it has great interpretive displays. And they told a really great story, but it would have been nice to get more of a story. So there's lots of those kinds of places. And by the way, just so you know, with visitors, if you can keep visitors busy for 2 hours or more, spending doubles. By the way, that's a benefit of tourism, get people to spend money. If you live in these counties, and heaven forbid you ever head to Grand Forks, that's called leakage. Locally earned money spent somewhere else. Tourism is the easiest, fast way to fill that up. And if you keep busy for 2 hours by going to 2 or 3 sites, then they're going to say, it's time for lunch. Let's get something to eat. Let's get something to drink. Let's go here for breakfast, lunch, dinner. And that's how we're going to pull people into these communities. Does that make sense? So, near field communication, is that something you would like us to explore for you? Is getting a way to do talking trails to all your historic sites and museums? Would that be beneficial to you? Yeah. Is everybody okay with that?
Well, right now we are developing the talking trails for most of these spots.
Okay.
We're a little behind
Good.
Schedule right now, but it's all in the works.
It is, okay. And what counties are you doing it for?
We're doing it for Pembina and Walsh. Is there more
Okay.
than that? Mike, you're on the committee.
I thought it was the whole Rendezvous region.
For which?
For the talking trails, which counties are we doing?
In Cavalier County too, I think.
Cavalier, Pembina, and Walsh.
Okay.
And then Nelson County, we're doing our own. I wrote a grant for that.
Oh, you did?
Yep. Our state library actually just had, so hopefully other libraries took part of it, just gave out a up to $10,000 grant to promote historical things through your libraries. And that's where I got the money to do the talking trails in Nelson County, along with some money from our Nelson County JDA.
Okay.
So the project was totally funded.
So you don't have like an association of historical sites and museums for this, like the region?
There's museums in North Dakota, which is kind of dysfunctional right now,
Yeah.
and the plan has
But
always
that's-
been, I'm supposed to be vice president for the state, but, but the goal was to divide the state into quarters at least, and,
Yeah.
and have more
I
local
saw that.
groups, yeah.
Okay, and because here's, tomorrow at 10, right here in this room, I'm doing the whole plan, so if you don't mind, drive back. 10 to 2, and the Red River Regional Council will feed you lunch. I'm laying out this whole plan. And one of the things, probably the most controversial thing in there, will be We would like to get 5 counties working together because the Rendezvous region, which is the tourism organization, represents what, 3 counties? 4 counties? 3 counties. Cavalier, Pembina, and Walsh. Red River Regional Council represents Pembina, Walsh, Grand Forks County, and Nelson County. Tomorrow I'm asking for you to both sync and do 5 counties. Cavalier, Pembina, Walsh, Grand Forks County, and Nelson County. And when I say Grand Forks County, not Grand Forks, but everything out of it. The reason I'm asking for that is, number one, we can help market you on the Highway 2 corridor, because right now trying to market Cavalier and Pembina and even Walsh counties on Highway 2, can't do it. There's no connecting points except at 29. And so we thought if we had that Highway 2 corridor and we could do billboards and campaigns along that corridor on their way to or from Devil's Lake, which everybody knows about, including in Minnesota, then maybe we have a chance of pulling them into Nelson County and into the other parts of Grand Forks County. I mean, the more you have to offer collectively, the further people will come and the longer they will stay. And nobody's going to go to a county line and say, oh, that's a different county, turn around quick. So that's one of our controversial things. Can we get these 2 organizations to work together? And here's the thing. In this plan tomorrow, that nobody's heard about it yet except for the people at Red River Regional Council and their immediate team, is if each of these 5 counties would pitch in, so here we go, County Commissioner, if each of these counties would pitch in $3,500 a month for 3 years, we could put this place on the map. And we're not going to overrun it with tourism. We're not trying to be Devil's Lake. We're not trying to be any place else. I think we want to really promote that you could come here, and you know, rendezvous means get together. We want to see family reunions come here. We want to see groups of people come here. Rendezvous is about getting together. Want to play that up. But if each county, 5 counties pitch in just $3,500 a month, we could put together almost a $300,000 a year marketing campaign to pull people into your historic sites, into your museums, into your waterways, the ones you want to share. There are some locals that say, the last thing we need is any tourist on our water. And I have heard that. But it would help us really put you on the map. We started calling people in Pembina, in Walsh, and in eastern Grand Forks County. We just made a list. We called libraries, we called city halls, we called restaurants, we called probably 110 places and asked them, hi, you know, I heard that there's this rendezvous region that promotes tourism in your area. Are you familiar with it? 1 out of 110 people said they'd heard of it. So not even your locals know about the rendezvous region. So part of our marketing is that the #1 reason people travel is to visit friends and family. So part of this marketing is doing like billboards and saying, welcome to the rendezvous region. So even our locals go, hey, we're in the rendezvous region. So that when friends and family visit you, they know where you exist. And this is not the fault of the rendezvous region, by the way. They have no money. They have like $60,000 a year to promote 3 counties. We'd like to expand it to 5. I think you have enough historical attractions in all these 5 counties that are outstanding. Some of your best waterways, I mean, I gotta tell you, I thought Nelson County was the prettiest of all 5 counties. Because you have to get 30 miles inland of Highway 29 before you get anything other than farmland. But once you're over there, you see terrain changes, you see little creeks, you see those neat little, Larimore dams and was it, all those other little lakes and stuff. And it's just phenomenal. So that's going to be part of this. So we'd love to see the rendezvous region become a 5-county region. I know it's big, but you know what? It's not that hard to get around to these. It's just not that difficult. And I think that would really make you an amazing place to come and visit. What county is Turtle River in? Grand Forks County. And in Grand Forks County, we're not talking about Grand Forks. We're probably not talking about Thompson or the very close, bedroom communities to Grand Forks, but once you get out on Highway 2, you know, Lakota and out there, I think they're worth promoting. They've got some great historical assets, and I think they should be included. You know, I haven't even talked to the Red River Regional Council about, gee whiz, can you add another county to your charter? You know, because the state has, what, 8 regions? And they're already defined. Are we taking the county away from that region? Or, you know, can we help them? We've had a hard time getting Cavalier County involved in this process at all. And so do we cross them off? I hope not. I think there's some great things there. I mean, we're going to include the Pembina Gorge no matter what. You know, and so those are those kinds of things that we're running into. Does that make sense? Questions?
That's the main reason that Talking Trails, I picked it for 2 reasons. One, it's a North Dakota company, and I liked that.
It is. Okay,
it's in North Dakota. It's based out of Bismarck. I can call a guy up. I talk to Sean every time. I don't just get an operator. He's phenomenal. He texts on weekends. It's great. So that was number 1. But number 2 was to be able to coordinate. So if somebody comes for traveling, their app, if they're up doing the 80 points at Rendezvous region, that will also then, when they get close to Nelson County, lead them to, hey, there's another trail right here. And they also have many others throughout the state. So if people came, they've got the Germans from Russians down in Linton. They've got, trails kind of all over the Fargo Air Museum and things like that. But the fact that it partnered with the one that was happening just to the north of us was the ultimate, so that we could partner, you know.
And are you doing Talking Trails also? Is it the same company?
Yep.
Oh, good. I should say that's the first thing we need to do is make sure.
You know, when you talked about that, working all together and the Rendezvous region coming together, when the Rendezvous region was first started, that was the #1 goal of the Rendezvous region. The city of Walhalla started it, and we knew that we did not have enough attractions to keep people for the weekend. So this has come full circle. So we joined in with Cavalier County and thought, well, if we brought them in, we could get them to sleep overnight, either in a campground or a hotel or whatever. And that was the reason for it, to share all our attractions. Now you get all of these put together. So it's come full circle of what it was originally started as.
I just kept thinking that if we could do billboards that just said, and it doesn't mean I'm a big, huge proponent of billboards, but we got all the traffic counts on Highway 2. We got all the traffic counts on Highway 29. As a matter of fact, the other day when we came here, we actually started in Fargo and photographed every single billboard coming up 29. And by the way, it was sea to side. It was all water as far as we could see any direction. We just went, oh my gosh. And luckily the freeway was actually, at least the northbound lanes were open. But, so we know the hardships that you've been through recently. And so anyway, we just thought if you could do these 5 counties, I know it's a bit of a stretch. I think you could increase your funding. I think that we could pull people from Highway 2 from Lakota heading up north into the other counties and just take this whole thing so you're not so Highway 29 and 81 Oregon. You know, you have so much focus on 29, and from 29, it doesn't look like you have anything to offer because that's all we see is farmland. But I think if we can get on Highway 2 and get people out in the back roads, they're going to find some. I mean, that historic village of Stump Lake blew me away. I would have loved to have Talking Trails when you're there walking around, which you're working on.
There'll be 6 of them there.
6 of them, fantastic.
And they each have like 3 stops.
Yeah. I mean, that's going to be fantastic. And that could work when we're here in the shoulder seasons. Because I talked about being open, could be open on Fridays and Saturdays, 3 months of the year. Well, then we can fill in. And we can even market that, you know, get this app, you know, like the QR codes that you're putting there where we can download the app for free. And then they'll say, oh, here's where you are. You know, or you pick the historical site you're at and tell that story. Just like the schoolhouses. I think that's some cool things there. And that's it's a far less expensive thing to do that than it is to go build displays and put them out there and keep them maintained and everything, historical displays. So I think that's awesome. Love to see that in all 5 counties. But that's one thing, you know, and then is there a way to create an association of historic sites and museums if we could convince the Rendezvous region to do those 5 counties? If we could convince them to do it, would you consider creating a association? It doesn't have to be another formal 501c3 organization, but just an association of museums and historic attractions where you all meet together like this, like once a quarter, and talk about talking trails. I'm so glad that you guys ended up with the same one, you know, but what about everybody else? And how much does it cost? And what do we need to do? You could actually have them come and talk to everybody, you know, and then you can apply for grants together. Does that make sense? Would you be willing to do that if I made a recommendation to create just a loose organization of historical sites and attractions in these 5 counties? You okay with that? Maybe you meet once a quarter, bring in somebody from Talking Trails, or bring in somebody from Google. By the way, most of the museums have not even claimed their Google listing, which is free. It says, do you own this business? And of course, it's not a business. But we haven't even done that. And by the way, in Google, you can put your hours and stuff, but a lot of your museums, so for instance, the one, and I think this is in Grafton, the village in Grafton, Google says it's permanently closed, which I don't think is true. Maybe it is. Is it true? It's permanently closed. It's not. But that's what somebody wrote in there because nobody's claimed to own that village, you know. And so so you can have somebody from Google, they'll come out for no charge and they'll sit there, bring your laptops and we'll get you all your Google listing. Same with TripAdvisor, free. So if you create, so I'll put a recommendation to create this association of historical sites and attractions for this rendezvous region. And then maybe you meet once a quarter and bring in a guest speaker. I mean, when I came here today and I saw there was this many of you, I almost said, my gosh, I actually did a webinar specifically for museums about telling stories. And I thought, man, I'd love to show that. So that would be another one that you could do. You could just watch the video. We have a video, it's like Netflix for communities. And I actually show museums of what they've done at low cost to really pull people in the door and tell the stories. Yeah.
You talked right there about catching individual travelers or families that are traveling.
Yes.
And I observed something that you reminded me of when you talked about how people use the campgrounds and places to stay as they set up a kind of an place of operation.
Yeah.
And then for a week or 3 or 4 days, hit other sites around there. I've seen some really amazing things in each of these counties up here. The Stump Lake campground, we have to go down and catch one of the musical performances down there, and there were I was astonished. It was old-time music, and there were dancers from Manitoba and Saskatchewan that came down, and there were a couple hundred people. And you know, I wonder if there's a place for, like, you know, festival events, let's call it, or you know, gathering kinds of things like that. Or the wonderful when the family reunion, the Marshall family. Family came from Saskatchewan and from the East Coast and got together there at a historic site. Just, I mean, you know, no amenities at all. And, you know, sometimes people enjoy, you know, sharing their experiences with other people too.
Of course. Of course. I mean, that's where Instagram comes in. That's where Facebook comes in. I mean, that's where those come in and say, man, we just went here. And they're telling their friends and family. You know, and yeah, I mean, this is about spreading the word, you know, and letting them know that you exist. And you're right. I mean, even for us, when we were here in September, we were here for almost a month. And we're in the Listico campground. But guess what? We drove almost 2,000 miles in 4 counties during that time. And none of it, I always said, I was kidding Don and said, I think 1,500 miles of it was on dirt roads. But it wasn't near that much. But the point is, it was easy to get to places if we just knew they existed. But there were so many places we would go drive for 45 minutes, and it was fun to drive out in the country. They're not busy roads. I mean, you know, and except during harvest. And we'd go there, we'd drive 45 minutes, we'd go up and closed. No information, no hours, nobody to call, just closed. And that's what you don't want, because younger people are going to be quick to go right to Facebook and say, well, I just drove 45 minutes, this place is never open. See what I mean? And so we got to be careful of that, and that's why some consistency. In the plan, I'm actually doing things about signage you can do. You know, go to a website, check our hours, a QR code that would just say, here's a list of the attractions and what they're open. But then it's going to be important to find out from everybody, if you close for some reason, we got to let somebody know so that somebody says, well, you're supposed to be open and you're not because somebody was sick. Or, you know, I know how it works with volunteers. So we got lots of little things to work through. But if you were open during the summer months, the peak months, maybe through September so we get some harvest, would you Fridays and Saturdays, does that work good for everybody? Or is it just Saturdays? Is there 2 days a week you could be open? Anybody? From anywhere?
We're open 7 days a week.
Yes.
Which is good, and people say, well, what's the busiest day?
Yeah.
I don't think it ever changes. I mean, every day seems to be almost the same. Monday, you get the leftover campers who were there for the weekend.
Right.
But a lot of people on the weekends when they go to the campgrounds,
They're fishing. And
yes, they're
playing.
staying there at the campground, so
Yes.
it's like, it's more
I agree.
weekday almost. I mean, Saturdays have been huge in the last couple of years, but Kathy, don't you agree? It's, every day is almost equal.
Yeah. And the challenge, and that's, you know, our best experience was there. Because you had all those buildings, they were all unlocked, we could walk in, there was a trust factor with us, we would walk in, we went to all of them. I mean, I was, you know, and my wife was looking at some things, I was busy looking at all the cars, you know, and tractors and stuff, and we spent probably, we went there 3 times. It's probably one of the few museums I've ever been to where I went 3 times because I couldn't see it all in a couple hours because there was so much there. And so, you know, those are those kinds of things. And you're right, there is no 1 day of the week, but we're just trying to get some consistency. We'd love to see everybody open 5 days a week or 6 days a week, but I just don't know that that's feasible even during the peak season. And so we thought, well, if we can all agree on Fridays and Saturdays, and then say, by the way, here's when other ones are open, you know, here's their list, so they might be, we're not saying everybody has to have this very same hours, but at least if we had some consistent hours and say Friday, what we're doing is we're creating a brochure that is the Rendezvous Region History Trail. And it doesn't matter whether you start. If you start in Grand Forks, you can take the trail this way. If you start in Pembina, you can take the trail this way. If you start in Walhalla, you can take the trail this way. But we're actually trying to connect a trail, which is what we did with this one. On the back, there's actually a little map that has where all of them are, and you just follow the trail. Then we're going to work with the state, North Dakota Department of Transportation on doing signage for some of these. So a lot of you don't even have highway signage. And so we also want to work with them in that. But if we send them down this trail, you know, is there 2 days in the week that you could all be open? And then the other ones would say, well, this one's open on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you know, it's open 7 days a week. Would that help anybody? You're sure quiet. This is not very helpful, you know. We need to hear from you.
Well, you have a very good plan. I'm from the older generation, so right away, my ears pick up when you start talking about what this is going to cost. I'm concerned, where do you go for money to develop this?
So right now, we're trying to figure out, can we do grants for like all the near field communications, the talking trails? Maybe we can do all that. We're trying to figure out a way to do it as grants. And by the way, you're more likely to get grants when you're grouped together than you are as individuals. So there's that. The only thing that where it's really tough to get grants is to hire people. That's where grants are hard to come by, is hiring people. And as a matter of fact, I don't know any grants where you can hire people under the grant. Most grants are meant for infrastructure, signage, interpretive. They're meant for those things. And so that is the one challenge we have, is there are no grants to say, well, can we get a grant to be there, pay somebody to be there 2 or 3 days a week? And that's why I'm saying I understand about being volunteers and, you know, having a personal life besides, I think
But signage, I'm talking about...
Yeah, so signage like Department of Transportation, we're not asking any museums to pay into that. They're federal transportation
We
grants.
have a House of Representatives here, maybe he could tell us where we could get some.
Well, okay. I have Parks and Rec budget, I also have the State Historical Society, and I have the, a lot of other ones, but it was really hard to get in Bismarck, the Heritage Center there, to put up a sign. And I said, I got Sarah Audie Coleman, and I have the Commerce budget too, which is tourism. So I said, you will put up signs. And we made sure we put money into those budgets, whatever she needed, to get signs up, whether it was a Historical Society, whether it was Commerce for tourism. So, I mean, and we are looking at probably $1 billion surplus this session. And I chair the Education and Environment section with all these budgets that I can, and the governor's on board. I can get the money, but we need a plan. We need to know, what do you need? And I mean, I got to get back there to that position. I got to get elected again, but I can pretty well say we would have the money in the state and we can direct it to whatever the plan is, you know.
And yeah, and I think you're exactly right. You know, one thing about North Dakota, Don started by saying that Roger said this was his second toughest assignment I've ever done in 40 years. And that's true. And it has nothing to do with your weather. It has nothing to do with the people. It has nothing to do with your attractions. It has to do with, as a state, to me, this is just my observation, you are probably the most fiscally conservative state in the country, number one. Number two, everywhere I go, there's no investment in the future. It's always about fixing what we have right now, and by God, we're not gonna, I mean, and it's not state, it's in Grafton. In Grafton, they have the armory there that they said we'd like to turn into a plaza. I gave them all kinds of ideas what they could do there, turn it into a plaza and a gathering area. But to get somebody to do something proactive in the state is like pulling teeth. And that has been why I said it's the second toughest thing. So even he said, we have money, would somebody give us a plan? I mean, and it's like, you gotta, the state just doesn't seem to think proactively, and I'm not talking about, I mean, the governor said, I want to invest. He used the word invest. I mean, when I did his Main Street conference, he came up to me afterwards and says, you know, Roger, I think you're my new best friend, because he made Main Street one of his 5 priorities for the state. You know, and so I think he's there, and we will have a plan that you can go see. So we're not asking every single historical attraction to go dig deep and come up with a bunch of money. We just need to know that when I say we, I'm talking about the state, the federal government with all that money that they're throwing out there, trillions of dollars, that they're putting out there, you have a chance to get it. And we're just saying now, the one missing ingredient is people opening up your sites. Because if we give you the money for signage, we give you the money for trail system, and I'm saying we, I don't need to be speaking for you, but if the state will help fund all these things, will you agree to be open a couple days a week? And that is where the hard thing is. The state can't say, we're going to give you, you know, $300,000 next year to hire people to keep your museum open. You know, it's just, that's the toughest part of grant funding. It usually doesn't pay for people, it pays for projects.
And if you can get the plan where you've got the signage, you've got the people coming in, they are going to, those tourists will fund it for you.
They will. You know what we found out? We found out that when museums will put a collection box and don't charge a fee, they make more money. Without asking for a fee, they say it's free, but they'll have the plexiglass collection box right there, and they make more money that way than they do by charging a fee. That's true. I mean, I've seen it firsthand. And so, yeah, our whole job is to get the people in North Dakota to spend some time in your part of the state. I mean, I was over in Dickinson and I asked people there, have you ever been over into Pembina County? And they go, where's that? You know, if I say Grafton, they go, Grafton, is that this state? See what I mean? So if we can get people in North Dakota to come here and spend a couple of hours, they will spend money here. And when people spend money here, then it's going to create jobs. And when you create jobs, people are going to want to live here. There's another thing that I'm bringing out tomorrow that's going to be a new one for the state, is we think North Dakota needs to go back to homesteading. We've been in all 41 of your communities in 4 counties. It didn't include Cavalier County. But in all these 4 counties, there's towns like, I'm trying to think of some of them, where 3/4 of the buildings are vacant or dilapidated. They're never, they're falling down. Look at Ardoc right up the road. The big, all these buildings falling down. You know what? Rather than pay people $15,000 to agree to live here for 2 years, why don't you go start knocking down some of these, create a redevelopment authority, knock down some of these old homes and stuff, and by the way, go to the property owners and say, hey, we'd like to buy it from you. We'll pay you what the assessed value is. I mean, if it's just abandoning. So we're not talking about taking people's property, but then getting rid of, I think it was Conway, I can't remember which town it was, that actually has done practice burns in the town, where the fire departments came and burned down properties. Well, wouldn't it be great if you had some of these properties? We know, I've talked to college students, or millennials now, they were millennials when they were in school, but now they're out, and they're going, you know what? Me and 3 of my friends, our families would love to come into one of your towns, and we're going to you give us 3 or 4 home sites, and we're going to help build each other's homes, and we're going to come and live there. We're going to work remotely. You know what's funny about the millennial generation? You know what their priority list is? In all previous generations, the #1 priority list is jobs. In the list of the top 10 things that millennials want, you know where jobs is? Number 10. Quality of life is the first 9. Schools, medical, recreation, all of those things are 1 to 9 and 10. They say, well, if we find a place, as a matter of fact, Amazon, all the tech companies, something has changed in the United States. For the first time in U.S. history, jobs are going where the talent is or where the talent wants to be. So if we can make Northeast North Dakota a place where the talent wants to be, the jobs are going to come. My son worked for Amazon for years, and that's exactly what they did with where they're going. They're going wherever their young people want to be. And so what's interesting about these millennials is say, wow, if we can homestead a home, and by the way, there'd be strings attached. That would say, okay, we're going to have home sites, we're going to give you the home site, and here's the strings. You have to start construction on a home within 18 months. So you get permits and all that, go through financing and everything. And it can't be a mobile home. It has to be stick-built or modular, which means we're going to build a home. It has to be at least like 1,000 square feet. So there's some rules there. And you're going to build that home and it's going to be your primary residence for 2 years. But after 2 years, they decide to sell it and then build another home. We're all for it. See what I mean? So this state was founded on homesteaders. I think you could go back to that. Because there are so many places, and you can even do this in what we call downtowns, where you have most of your small town downtowns, Cavalier's going to do fine, Park River's going to do fine, Grafton will do fine, but a lot of these little small towns, the downtowns are never going to come back. Lakota will probably be fine. They're not going to come back. You can't outcompete Amazon. But there are so many millennials that say we don't need to have a storefront, but we want to be these commercial buildings. We can live upstairs and have a maker's shop or an art studio, or we could do eBay stores. I mean, they could do this stuff from anywhere. And so we're just thinking, so I just wanted to let you know, these are some things that are in the plan to start repopulating the area. But one thing about history, we may not come here for your history, but once we learn about it, we appreciate the people that we're going to live here and interact with. You get what I mean? They're going to say, wow, these people were really resilient coming here. You had people here from all over the world coming here. And they're going to see what it took to live here. They're going to say, I like these people. That's what history does. It makes a connection between the person visiting your museum and the desire to live here. So, It may not be the number one reason, but we want to do that history brochure. We want to put you front and center because I think your historical attractions are outstanding. Yes?
You haven't mentioned the historical library that we have in Grafton, the Andrew Carnegie Library.
Oh, yes.
Which is a disgrace. It's falling apart. And they can't even open up the main old doors because there's paint falling off the walls. They won't give enough money to them. I heard that one time they were going to demolish it. Who does that?
Well, who owns it? Is it the city? Or
Yes,
is it?
the city does.
And those are things, I mean, I'm glad we'll make a note of that and
But they finally have a sign up, it just says library, you know, off the
Yeah, I
highway.
didn't know there was
It doesn't
actually-
say anything about a historical Andrew Carnegie Library. And I had friends who came from Minnesota last year because they go to all the different towns that they are nearby that have a Andrew Carnegie Library. I was embarrassed to have them come to our library and see it because they're not taking care of the old part. They added on a new section and that's all they care about. So they haven't restored any of it. And it's really a shame because I'm really about historical buildings and that's one of the reasons I'm living in Grafton is because they have a lot of history there, a lot of wonderful brick buildings, and they're just not doing anything. And that's the whole thing. It's hard to get people to do anything here. I grew up here and I finally moved back here. I lived both in Seattle and in Arizona the last 22 years. I said, I want to come back to North Dakota. I want to come back where it's this small town. But then you come here and it's just like pulling teeth to get anything done.
Right.
They don't do anything.
Well, when we were here in September, we had meeting after meeting after meeting. And then I would check back with Dawn or Stacy and say how'd it go, and they go, yeah, they're just not, I mean, I'm writing this plan for them, and I have 68 recommendations, and I'm having to write a sales pitch on every single recommendation because people just says, yeah, we're fine the way it is. We're just fine the way it is. And then it's like, so I know I feel your pain. That's why this is one of the most difficult places we've ever worked is because of that. I mean, I don't know why there's no proactive, and I know a lot of it has to do with money, but a lot of time, I mean, like, you know, state running, I mean, I wonder how many of the 50 states have any kind of a surplus, let alone $1 billion or whatever it is. And I'm not saying they need to go spend it all, but sometime this state and sometime the communities need to invest in themselves. And I just don't see that. I see that I think, you know what, my favorite town in all 4 of these counties is easily Cavalier. I mean, from their city manager, who she's probably in her 30s, to their mayor, Lacey, I mean, they're so gung-ho. What can we do next? They're the only community out of 41 communities that's email and say, Roger, can we do this? Can we do this? What can we do next? I haven't heard that from Park River. I haven't heard it from Grafton. I haven't heard it from Minto. I haven't heard it from Anetta, is I'm getting that right? You know, which I think is probably the prettiest town. I mean, there's so many opportunities, you know. I mean, you know, I have to tell you that when I came in here, we secret shopped all these counties. We did a workshop in every one of the 4 counties. And after the last one, I got an email. And it was from a Gmail account, somebody I don't know. It says, Mr. Brooks, why are you here telling us what we should do? We never asked for your advice, so please don't give it to us. You know, I'm going, and so, you know what, the first recommendation in this plan is about getting 5 counties to work together. Now, they may, Rendezvous Region may say, well, ours is set by state charter, so we can only do 4 counties. Fine. Rendezvous Region is our big player in this whole plan. Rendezvous Region Tourism. That's how we're going to build this whole place out, is Rendezvous Region Tourism. They play a huge role. We need to get them staffed up. This plan calls for 3 full-time staff for Rendezvous Region. But recommendation number 2 is to go to every single one of these 41 communities at a town council, whatever they got, and say, do you want any help? Because when I have a mayor come up to me and how dare you try to share our lakes with visitors, they're going to take all of our fish. This is a mayor. And they say, but Roger, that's not the feeling of the whole town. I said, well, if the whole town elected this person as your mayor, guess what? Nobody's going to come and invest in this town or do anything because of one person, what they said. You know, I was in Lakota and I took a picture of this beautiful home, and all of a sudden there's this car following me all over town. Finally I stopped, the lady got out and said, wait, are you taking a picture of my house? It's also the place where, you know, the police came after me because I took a picture at the grade school during recess. And in that case, they did the right thing. They absolutely did the right thing. A deputy came over and said, I was getting gas, and came over and said, excuse me, have you been taking pictures around this town? I said, yeah, it's a great town. She goes, well, we got a complaint from the school that you're taking pictures. I said, I took a picture of the grade school. Kids are out there. I had my camera out the window. It's a big, huge honking camera. And then kids are going, take my picture, take my picture. And I'm going, oh. So I took a snapshot of the school because I thought it was great. And then, yeah, of course, they called the cops. So that was fun. But then when you have the mayor come up and start yelling at you, you know, because you're trying to promote tourism in their town and they don't want, so those are those kinds of things, so I feel your pain. We're trying to get past those. But when somebody says, well, that was our mayor, that is not the voice of our town, they say, well, then why is your town electing this person as your mayor?
That's right.
I mean, you have, you know, and anybody who's going to invest here, by the way, this whole effort is aimed at millennials and families. One thing you need to know about millennials. So let me go there. Because not all millennials are woke. Not all of them are that way. Because here's the thing. Millennials are like every other generation. Once they start having families, they want to have a yard, they want to have safe. Their number one priority is safety for kids. Yeah. Number two is child care. Number three is education. Number four is health care for kids. I mean, their top things are all, but here's the difference. Boomers are having their kids in their 20s. Millennials are having their kids in their late 30s and early 40s. They are better parents than, I always say, you know, and they're more civically inclined. They don't want to just be a young professionals group. They don't want to be just, yeah, you're saying you want us. They want to actually be involved. One challenge you have is North Dakota in general is seen as the good old boys network. You know what I'm talking about? I'm talking about people my age. That we're the good old boys network and how dare you, some young punks coming in here and tell us what we should do. Yet they're the ones they want to be engaged. They want to be part of the solution. And so they're the most educated generation in U.S. history. They are the most diverse generation in U.S. history. They're the most civically inclined. You have to remember, us boomers, we were down with the establishment. Then when we became the establishment, we really screwed it up, but so to speak. But with the millennials, the fathers are spending twice as much time with their kids as our generation did. Twice as much. Here's the thing. If you cater to the millennials, I tell this to kids that I talk to all the time, if you cater to the millennials, you're going to get us boomers anyway because we like hanging out with you whether you like it or not. It's true.
We're the grandparents.
You absolutely. And you know what, as grandparents, that's right. If your kids are moving here, you know, I got to tell you a story. Is we moved from the Seattle area 10 years ago down to Peoria, Arizona. Because we saw the writing on the wall in Seattle. And it's just gotten worse and worse and worse. Meanwhile, our daughter, who is a well-known author, best-selling author, made more money in a year than I make in my whole life, moved from Seattle to Spokane, Washington, so she could put her kids in a private religious school. And so, great, fantastic. And last June, her husband, who is this bodybuilder guy, Native American guy, big tattoo on his arm, that her readers called arm porn, went in for a Moderna vaccine, created blood clot, killed him. 44 years old, 3 kids. Guess what? We're moving to Spokane. During this project, we sold our home in Arizona. So if you get young people to move here, Your parents are going, grandparents are going to come back. Guess what's nice about that? You don't have to create jobs for them. Number one. Number two, they will still bank with you. They will still eat at your shop at your grocery stores. They will still be here. Grandparents are now going where their kids are. So if you can get millennials to come here, you're going to get their parents. And so that's why we're aiming this at that group. And they are the work from anywhere crowd. Our son, Chris, who used to work for Amazon, now works for Expedia. He goes, I can live anywhere in the United States. And they're paying him well over 6 figures a year. And he says, yeah, if I have Starlink or fiber, I'm there. See what I mean? And so that's where we're heading with this. If we can get these young people here, number one is I was in one of your towns, driving around, walking around downtown, I can't remember which town it was in, and big camera, taking pictures and everything. The guy walks out of a tavern and says, what the hell do you think you're doing? Now remember, if young people, millennials, are coming into your town and taking pictures, looking around, and locals are going, what the hell are you doing here? Guess what? They're not going to stay there and go, whoa, okay, we're out of here. And we had that experience, you know, and we're not even young people. They're the ones that go, whoa, I don't want to be part of this. So one thing we have to do is we have to change the attitude of the people in Northeast North Dakota. So that when I meet a city council person, they say we have terrible weather almost every month of the year. I mean, really? That's how you introduce yourself. And so one of our recommendations is start talking to kids in grade school. You've got to start, you know what? Working for the Red River Regional Council was Jacob. Jacob, does he live in Grafton? Born and raised here. I'll never forget talking to him. He's in his, 30s? Late 20s. He says, oh yeah, Roger, I mean, ever since they're growing up, everybody from junior high school teachers, middle school teachers, and high school teachers would, so grade, middle, and high school teachers would say, as soon as you graduate, make sure you get out of Dodge, out of here. He said, that's the way I'm raised. I mean, it's even my parents, it's just the way they were raised. It's like, you know, once you graduate, you need to get out of town. And then you have to change that. You need to start in the schools. And that's the second thing. It's getting people to be proactive rather than just reactive. And number two is changing the attitude. This place is beautiful. I know you've had the floods in the last few weeks and that you go through these cycles. But I'm telling you, this is a beautiful place. I think your quality of life is as good here as anywhere in the United States. You know, you can say, yeah, but San Diego has a whole lot better weather. Sure, if you don't mind paying $1.2 million for a starter house. See what I mean? If you take those things into consideration, I think what you have is fantastic. Anyway, I'm kind of going on and on here. But tomorrow morning from 10 to 2, we're doing this. I'm going to lay out this whole plan. And I wanted to let you know that you are a major part of this. Your historical sites and attractions can help close the sale to these visitors. Because we're going to learn about your history. We're going to learn about the resiliency of the people. We're going to learn about all the different cultures that came from all over the world to come here and work and plant fields. I mean, we're going to learn those things, and you play a major role in that. We just need you to be open a couple of days a week so we can start promoting you. We really want you to succeed. I mean, you know what? We're not meeting with hotel groups. We're not meeting with restaurant groups. We actually met with a few of all these. But you're the group that I wanted to, on this return trip, you're the group. You and Rendezvous Region are the two groups I want to speak to the most. Because you have the greatest assets here in tourism. Camping is just a way to get them to spend the night.
Comment. Representative Munson mentioned something earlier about the funding at the state level and he can help or whatever. I just want to put a plug in for Mr. Munson because he has worked with me and myself and others of the Rendezvous Region for many, many years, and he has been very, very instrumental in getting funding for when Park and Rec first got put in the Rendezvous Region, all our trail development, signage for the trails. It's been very instrumental in that. So when he says he can find this funding, I truly believe that he will work on that to no end until we get it. And
one thing for him, and for anybody at the state legislature, one thing that's really important, if we give you the money, will you invest it so that people can experience what you have, which means you need to be open. I mean, not every place. Or you're gonna have the talking trails, or you're gonna have anything there that'll just help people. If we're gonna give you the money to do this, will you at least create an experience that will help grow our population and our tax base? You know, this whole thing comes down to tax base, even tourism. It's just a means to an end to get people to spend money here and then leave and go home. You know, and that's what this is really about. And so if he's going to commit to investing in this, will you show him a return on investment? And that is where your time is going to be more important than cash. And that means being open or at least letting us do the talking trails, all of these things that we need to do.
And when you were talking about the locals, some of them, you know, not that really engaged in it and whatever, I think sometimes when you talk or when others talk about the tourism development and what we can have and all these, it kind of is maybe a little bit overwhelming for some, because, and I used to for years say, you know what, we're not the Grand Canyon, we're not Disney World, but if you can have an extra 50 people a week in your community or 20 people a week, we're not going to get overrun. Because some of them will say, oh, we don't want to be overrun by all these tourisms. I can guarantee you that's never going to happen.
No, that's not.
Never going to happen. But if you can get an extra 20 people in your community every week, just imagine what that can do for our local economy. It'd just be amazing.
Okay, which town has the little restaurant? She's got some minions outside.
Forest River. Forest River.
Forest River.
That's a great little restaurant.
Great little restaurant. Our whole goal is, even if we send people out to your lakes, they're not spending any money. But if they're there, can we get them to go down? And she is awesome. The other one, what's the one that's is it in Livermore? Or no, where's it at? That has, it's all themed for firefighters.
Station.
What's that?
The station in Larimore.
The station in Larimore. Great restaurant, big chalkboard on the back where kids get around. I mean, that is fantastic. Their whole theme there. So our whole goal is not to crowd your waterways. It's not to put a whole bunch of people here. It's you have campgrounds that are sitting there empty 3/4 of the year just waiting for harvest. Almost every town has them. We saw campgrounds and they're just sitting there. And we never saw anybody in them in September or August. And we kept going, well, why, what are all these, and maybe they're only for harvest. I don't know what they're for. But we just kept seeing there's all these, but if we can get them on the lakes, if we can get them wherever we can get them, and then say, by the way, you got to go to the station, you got to go to her restaurant, you've got to go, that's what we're trying to do, is get people in these towns and say, this is a cool place, I can live here. I'd love to take one of these old buildings in downtown and remodel it. And actually, you can have people, some of these downtowns could be residential, where they take cool old buildings. By the way, millennials love the old brick and everything. They're not into all of the suspended ceilings and stuff. They want that stuff that's kind of native to you and kind of rustic. And that's a cool thing. So, and then if their parents fall and say, we'll take a couple buildings too. You know, wouldn't that be cool? You got to start somewhere. So tourism is the front door. Make sense?
Just got to break open that box and think outside it.
That's right.
You do, and if you get a chance to, we are filming it tomorrow. I know a lot of you drove a long ways for this today, but I'm just begging you to be a part of this. You know, urge the Rendezvous region to take on 5 counties. I know it's a lot for them, but I think it'll increase funding. It gives us 2 great corridors we can tap into. It ties more of a square together rather than this line and then, you know, kind of that 7 shape of Cavalier and, you know, and Pembina and then down to Walsh. And so, so those are things I just want to, I beg you to just please, and work really hard to be open. Sit down with your local historical people and say, you know what, could we be open on, even if it's just Saturdays from June, beginning of June to the end of September? If we could get that, it's a start. And I think the only way you could do that is sit down with your own volunteers. I can't have you commit right today, but we'd love to have you have some consistency. Say, you know what, if you're out exploring, set Saturday apart, take an extra day off, set Saturday or Thursday, Friday, whatever day you pick, and you got to go and do the history trail, or part of the history trail. There's no, by the way, you could not do your whole history trail, what I have mapped out, in a day. I mean, I spent half the day just in the Pembina County Museum, or more. I went there 3 times. So you can take any piece of it, but at least you'll know they're open. So people in Grand Forks might say, well, this weekend we're going to go do the Pembina portion of the History Trail. The next weekend we're going to go do the Nelson County one, and they'll do that. So we just have one day in common. So if you go back home and say, is there one day in common that we could agree to be open on that day, or 2 days, what 2 days would those be? You know, and you're right, a lot of these visitors on Saturday, they're at the campgrounds, and it's on Monday, you know, or Sundays that they're going into the museums. But if we had some day that's consistent, I think it would be awesome. So, make sense? Questions? Yes.
That is something I've heard you mention, and now you're working on one day, but I think...
I'd love to do 2.
No, you need more than that.
Well, I agree.
What I'm hearing from people that come when I'm working is they're frustrated because they can't go to several places.
Right.
We're open 7 days a week at the Pembina County Museum, and that is really nice, but they say, well, we can't go to these other places because they're not open, or do you know of any place that's open?
Right.
And I think
I
by
agree.
repeating that over and over again, that's cementing in somebody's mind that that's all we have to do. But I think the funding, the volunteers, everything has to be for promoting more.
I agree. You know what? In most states, where I've worked with state historical societies, and I've done that in about 15 or 16 states, worked with state historical, our goal was 5 days a week. And the day we would be closed would be a Monday and maybe a Tuesday. It was never on a Sunday. It was always it was Monday or Tuesday would be the 2 days they'd be closed. Because they, you know, and that was our whole goal, and it should be for years. You know, but you got to start somewhere. You know, and I just, right now, I don't, you know, I know you're just coming out of COVID now, and you may say, well, geez, we've been shut down for the last 2 years. You know, now we have to go back and regroup with all our volunteers. I know there's a lot of that, but you're right, you should be open 5 days. I love the fact that Pembina County is open 7 days a week. It's fantastic. And I was there on a Sunday, and I can't remember the other 2 days. They were during the week. They weren't on Saturdays. And we loved it. And it was so cool because there might be 10 people in that whole vast place. It was so awesome. You know, I mean, it's just excellent. So, make sense? Yes.
One thing we're trying to figure out, so I'm going to ask as long as you're here and everyone else, is getting Wi-Fi or internet or something so we can be in the 21st century, even though we're dealing with old stuff. But we're in need of a security system, and we just had some vandalism out there. Okay. And we'd like to get some internet so we can utilize our meeting spaces and, you know, even some of your talking trails and stuff that people's cell phones don't always work.
No,
is there some magic or some...
There is. Okay. So...
advice from anybody?
So let me start. And I mentioned this earlier, Starlink. It costs $640 for the Starlink equipment, which is a satellite you can put on a roof or on a post. All it has to have is a clear sky. It comes with a modem, a Wi-Fi transmitter, and with Starlink, I found a great, and so you have that expense. But then it costs $110 a month. So that's another expense. So you're talking about another $1,300 to $1,400 a year. $110 a month. And it is, then you can add security, you can add the Wi-Fi, you can add all of those things, as long as you still have to have electricity too. But then you can add your security cameras and everything. And Starlink, and there's no bandwidth limit on it. So it doesn't mean like, well, if we use more than 1 gig, because it sends some people wandering around, start photographing it, start using up our bandwidth, and then we didn't have any bandwidth. There is no limits to it. So, for us to get Starlink, I was one of their beta testers for Starlink. But beyond that, they said, well, where are you, because we had it down in Arizona. And they said, well, we're moving to Spokane, Washington. It says, we don't have any service available. So I looked around the Spokane area. I found this little teeny town called Cholula or something like that. And it said, oh, we have an opening there. I said, aha, I'm going to claim that as my home address, and then it'll send out the equipment the next day. But if you say, oh, I'm from Grafton or wherever, you know, Cavalier or whatever, they say, oh, we don't have any openings out there yet. Remember, it's going to be open to everybody. But right now, they're still putting satellites up there. So, but even though I have it up there, we're using it here in Grafton. I pay another $25 a month to use it on the road, but it doesn't matter. You just find a place that's open. They'll send you the equipment, then you go set it up, and then you have, even though we're in places that are already full, we can still use it. So there are ways that you can get that, but I think that's going to be the best, easiest way, because doing cell towers and everything is ridiculous. It just takes forever. It costs a lot more money. Starlink is going to be a savior for all these rural areas. But I don't know, anybody else have any?
We use Polar, and Polar is wonderful.
Yeah.
If they're taking care of the Space Force Station, they can take care of all of us.
So are they in all these places?
Everywhere.
They are, and it's all, is it fiber?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's all gig.
Yeah, fiber optic everywhere. Do you realize we had high-speed internet here before my brother in Portland, Oregon had it?
Wow. Well, see, and those are things, you just taught me something I didn't even know.
We have fiber.
I knew there was fiber in some places, but I didn't realize. So is there fiber out where you're at? Do you know?
You should have Polar.
Everybody with Polar.
Yeah,
Polar.
Polar.
No, they're in Grafton. I don't think they have Polar in Grafton.
I don't think so.
That would be big, you'd have to go from Mid-Continent.
Okay.
Polar does
That's always the, I gotta tell you,
UTMA.
I have to tell you something. I'll tell you one more little story. We were based in Seattle. Our office was a few miles away from Microsoft's world headquarters in Bellevue, Washington. And our office, where it was situated, we didn't even have cable. We didn't have, what I had was twisted pair, which is telephone lines. We paid $650 a month for 3 megabits up and down. You know why we moved to Arizona? We moved our whole company, staff, everybody to Arizona because I contacted people, I saw on the web that they had fiber for $100 a month. I hadn't seen that anywhere around here. You just made a huge sales pitch that I didn't even know about.
Okay. Polar is the pioneer. We've had
That's awesome.
fiber in the ground to every school, every courthouse, anybody, everywhere. I got it right through my front yard. That's from United
awesome.
in Langdon, but comes right past my house. I've got fiber.
That is a huge selling point. Huge selling point.
This last session, I found out that Fargo and Mayville and up and down the valley, they don't have fiber. I couldn't believe it. We just funded fiber for every place in the whole state. There's probably a few in the Badlands that aren't going to have it. We've had fiber forever.
I bet you we've had fiber 10 years. Fiber optic.
Really?
10? It's got to be more than that.
And how much does this Polar charge for for probably gig service? I mean, you could do full gig.
My high-speed internet at my house with basic cable, it's $146 a month.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they install everything.
Yeah, okay.
And mine go at 250.
250, depending on how many, because you get
Yeah.
cable with it and
I get
everything.
full everything.
You get everything. Gotcha. Okay.
And you can get its security system also, United Telephone.
Yeah.
Security system on that whole thing.
That's fantastic. That's really good news. See, I didn't know that.
One of our local contractors dug up a fiber optic. It costs about $10,000-15,000 to fix it.
Yeah.
That's been going on for a lot of years. There's a lot of fiber.
Huh? That's fantastic. That's such a huge sales pitch. Man, that should be front and center on just about every economic development website, every city website. By the way, that's going to be one more thing, and I know I promised I wouldn't keep you past a couple hours, and our time's almost up. But I got to tell you that we went to all 41 cities to look at their websites. I would say that 30 of the cities, the websites look like 1983. That was before Macs even existed. I mean, they're that outdated. And if you want young people and you have a website that's an antique now, you know, anything over 10 years is an antique now. And that takes me to another. I was working in Idaho Falls, Idaho. And they said, we have a historic downtown. I went to them and I said, I didn't see any buildings older than like the 1950s in your downtown. And they go, they all went, yeah, I told you it's historic. I said, thanks a lot. You just called me historic. I was born in the 50s. But anyway, I just, what you have is just amazing. So I can't really lost my train of thought with all that. But with this, I think having the fiber, I had no clue. I had no clue. But your cities need to do new websites. Look at Cavaliers, it's great. I mean, it's the one that stood out to me because it looked like modern, you know, like young. And so those are other things we're going to do. That's in the plan, is to work with these cities and towns. Even the little towns of 100 people, they still need, if they want to grow at all, put something out there. By the way, every city website should help sell the city, not just be, here's our minutes, here's our sewer, water. And tomorrow I'm going to show one. I was just in this little town of Waupun, Wisconsin. And right on their homepage, they had quotes about people that want to live there and how great it is and everything. I mean, I just saw their homepage, I was like, I love this town. Just like that. And I didn't see that very much in this region. So, other than Cavalier, there was about the only, there was a couple other ones that were fairly okay, but not great. So, anything else? Yes?
I think sometimes you're kind of forgetting, we need to educate the people in all our towns, what's
Yes.
in our town.
Yeah.
I go to other towns and I'll ask about where is this, or you got this, they have no clue what is in their town. Cavalier's the same way. I went to Grafton's the same way, I asked for a certain thing. They have no clue.
Well, and that was, we actually, the Red River Regional Council put county teams together, some of which were here. Put county teams in there, and I sent a whole list of questions. Is this place ever open stuff? And you can't believe how many of those counties couldn't answer the questions, and it's where they live. Right. You know, I'd see all these little restaurant stuff, but it doesn't, 3/4 of the businesses I saw in these 4 counties, I thought were out of business. Because you couldn't tell. You couldn't tell whether they're in business or not. And their response is, well, our locals know. Well, what if you want new locals to move in? What if you want, you know, they don't seem to care. And so that's what I mean. But yeah, you're absolutely right that, you're right. I mean.
Because I've gone over to, well, all over Thief River, but I've gone over to, where's that town with the sheds at, Jim?
Where the what is?
The shed is. Warroad, Minnesota.
Oh.
I asked them about that. People did not even know that shed was there. It's beautiful. It's a Marvin that owns it, and he's got over $1 million worth of cars in there. And they've never been there, and they did not even know that was there in their community.
Yeah.
I thought, that's a shame.
Yeah. Well, one thing we're trying to do is in this process, redevelop the Rendezvous Region website, not redevelop, but really make it a source not just for tourism, but for locals. That's why the billboards. Welcome to the Rendezvous Region. You know, 3 best walleye lakes. And people are going to go, 3 best walleyes? I wonder what he's picking. And then even locals will go to the websites. So we're trying to do that so there's a common place where people can go and get information. You know, and it'll be web-based. By the way, this whole program we're putting together to promote this region has no advertising in it other than billboards. And that's just temporarily to get people to understand where they're at. Because most of the people, they run the region, what the heck's that? Where's that? Where'd that come from? Who is it? By the way, it's even hard to get people to spell rendezvous. Yes. You know, but we can get past that by putting it out there so that people get to know it. But you're absolutely right.
Mrs. Kemp made a really good suggestion about not knowing, and we used to do a little cheat sheet in Walhalla behind the counter so the kids could know. Because I'll tell you what, if their parents aren't golfers, they don't know there's a golf course. I mean, it's just common. I have to admit, the state of South Dakota, and I stole their driving map from them, and we made our driving map similar. When you go there, that driving map is on there, and their customer service is phenomenal. They write on it, they tell you where they are, they're gonna tell you where this is. You could go to any gas station, any restaurant, any little podunk, whatever. That driving map was there, and that staff knew exactly what they were doing. I don't care, I must have quizzed, they must have thought I was a goofy person. But that's, I mean, they just know, they train their staff so well. That's one thing, Rapid City, South Dakota, I admit, they're experts at it.
Yeah, we've done a lot of work there. We just did Plaza in Rapid City, Main Street Square. We just got done working in Deadwood. I was there a couple months ago. I mean, that whole western South Dakota is the Great American Road Trip. You know, but you know what's interesting? Before we started working there, this is an interesting fact, 84% of Americans had no idea where Mount Rushmore was. You know what the most common answer was? Michigan. They had no idea. You say Sturgis, motorcycles, where's it at? I don't know.
You tell someone you're from North Dakota, they say, oh yeah, I was there, I saw the faces.
Yeah.
I've heard that dozens of times.
Yeah.
Or they'll ask you if the Indians are still up with us.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm done with my time, but I really, really appreciate you coming out. I hope you'll get together with your staffs and everything, and maybe you can do another meeting. If I'm not here, just say, hey, we talked to our staff, we can be open these days, these months, these years to just start. By the way, 2022 is the getting ready year. All this promotion isn't going to start until next year. So we have this year to kind of regroup after COVID, get everything in order. We can't go to the state now, we're legislative session already over. But we're getting ready for next year so that when he goes back, we've got a sponsor for maybe some bills there. A homesteading is one that we'd like to see at the state level for these rural communities. And so you'll have some things. So this year is getting things in place, and next year, let's start. Because we can't go out there today and say, we're ready, all of our museums are here, and they come here, and if they don't have a good experience, it's going to be very short-lived. So just so you know, this is the getting ready year. Next year, let's go. Yes?
But you're going to guarantee, Roger, you're not going to take all the fish out of the lake.
Promise. Matter of fact, in our promotional lakes, we're not even going for fishing. We're going for stand-up paddleboarding, kayaking, canoeing, wildlife viewing. That's what we're going for. Because we understand that these lakes that the local fishermen, we understand that. The last thing we want to do is alienate the locals from tourism. And by the way, when I went to North Dakota map and said best walleye lakes, Stump Lake came up, but none of the other ones except Devil's Lake.
Yeah, Devil's Lake.
Devil's Lake was it. So fine, for walleye, go to Devil's Lake, leave Stump Lake alone for the locals. So we absolutely get that. So on that note, thank you so much for coming out this afternoon, you guys. Thank you very, very much. John?
Again, thank you all for coming. I did want to acknowledge all of our partners for this project. This has been a huge group effort. We have county teams in every county. We have a regional team of 15 folks that have been meeting consistently. The project has been sponsored by each of our JDAs, Walsh, Pembina, Nelson County, the Rendezvous Region Tourism Council, the Grand Forks CBB. The City of Cavaliers sponsored a Partners in Planning grant to the state of North Dakota, so thank you, Representative Munson. These programs are very important in investing in our future, and our office invested with funds from the Economic Development Administration on the federal level. So it's been a huge effort, and we really appreciate all you coming out today. So thank you.
Thank you.